Hey guys, you know that feeling when something's wrong in your own neighborhood? When you realize the danger isn't some stranger in the dark, it's the guy next door? Tonight, I have 3 true stories about houses that hide terrible secrets and will make you look at your neighborhood a little differently. Let's get into it. The neighbor's basement. I've lived in my house for about 5 years now. Quiet street, good neighbors for the most part. People wave, you know? The usual suburban stuff. The house next door belongs to a guy named Mark. Mark is maybe 40, lives alone, keeps to himself. We're not friends, but we're friendly. He's always been normal, polite. The kind of neighbor who brings in your trash cans if you forget them. 2 months ago, Mark knocked on my door, said he needed a hand moving something in his basement. Heavy cabinet, couldn't do it alone. I said sure, that's what neighbors do, right? I'd never been in his house before. It was normal, clean, a little plain, but nothing weird. We went down to the basement, and that's when something started feeling off. The basement was unfinished, concrete floors, exposed beams, the usual. But the smell, God, the smell. It wasn't bad at first, just earthy, damp, like soil after rain. But the deeper we went, the stronger it got. And there was something else underneath it. Something sweet. Sickly sweet. I said, "What is that smell?" Mark laughed.
Oh, that's just old potatoes. I had a bag down here that rotted. Need to clean it out.
I believed him. Why wouldn't I? We moved the cabinet. It was heavy, solid metal, the kind of thing you'd use for tools or files. Mark said,
Thanks, man. Really appreciate it.
I was about to go back upstairs when I saw it. Behind where the cabinet had been, there was a door. Not a normal door. Small, heavy-looking, made of metal, and it had a bolt on the outside. A thick metal bolt. The kind you slide closed to keep something in. Or keep something out. I stared at it for a second too long. Mark said,
That's just an old coal chute. Leads nowhere. Been sealed for years.
I nodded. Said, okay. Went upstairs. Went home. But I couldn't stop thinking about that door. The bolt on the outside. The smell. The way Mark's voice changed when he talked about it. A few days later, I was talking to another neighbor. Old guy named Frank who's lived on this street for 40 years. Knows everything about everyone. I asked him about Mark. About the house. About the basement. Frank got quiet. Then he said,
You know about the family before Mark, right?
I didn't, Frank said.
Couple lived there with their kid, little boy. Must be 15 years ago now. One day the kid just disappeared, vanished. Police searched everywhere. Never found him. They moved out a few months later. Couldn't handle it, I guess.
I felt cold. That door, the bolt on the outside. I asked, did they ever find the boy? Frank shook his head.
Nope. The case went cold. Sad stuff, man.
I went home and tried to forget about it. Tried to tell myself I was being crazy. That door was just an old coal chute. The smell was potatoes and the bolt was for safety. But that night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that metal door, about what might be behind it. The next day, I did something stupid. I went to the county records office, looked up the house, found the old floor plans. There was no coal chute. The basement ended at that wall. Whatever was behind that door wasn't in the plans. I didn't sleep that night either. I started watching Mark's house, not in a creepy way, just paying attention, noticing things, like how he'd go down to the basement every night around 11 p.m., stay down there for an hour, come back up with that same smell on his clothes, and like how his trash always had those black contractor bags, heavy ones, the kind you use for construction debris or other things. He stopped inviting me over, stopped waving, just looked at me from his window when I passed by. 2 weeks ago, I called the police. Not with a report, just with a question. Asked about the missing boy from 15 years ago. Asked if they ever searched that house properly. The detective I spoke to got very quiet. Then he said,
Why are you asking?
I told him about the door, the bolt, the smell, the way Mark acted. He said,
Don't go near that house. Don't talk to him. We'll look into it.
I haven't seen Mark in a week. His car is still there, but the lights are off. The police won't tell me anything. They just say, ongoing investigation. Last night, I couldn't sleep again. I was standing at my kitchen window, looking at his house. At 2 a.m., the basement light came on. Just for a minute. Then it went off. And I swear, for just a second, I saw someone standing at his back door. Small, like a child, staring toward my house. Then nothing. I don't know what's behind that door. I don't know what happened to that little boy. But I know one thing for sure. I'm never going into Mark's basement again. I'm never moving that cabinet. I'm never asking him questions, because some doors should stay closed. And some neighbors you should never help. The last tenant. You know that feeling when you find an apartment that's way too cheap? The one where you keep waiting for the catch, but every time you look, it seems fine? That was this place. 2 bedrooms, good neighborhood. Rent was $300 less than anything else I'd looked at. The landlord seemed normal. Older guy, maybe 60, showed me around himself. Said the last tenant moved out suddenly. Family emergency back home. Needed to fill it fast. I asked the obvious question, why so cheap? He said,
Honestly, just want someone in there. Don't want it sitting empty.
I believed him. Why wouldn't I? The place looked fine, fresh paint, clean carpets, new appliances. I signed the lease that week. First night, I noticed the smell. Not bad at first. Just weird. Like someone had been cooking something heavy. Spices, grease. The kind of smell that gets into walls and never leaves. I'd dealt with that before. Old buildings hold smells. No big deal. I opened windows, lit candles, ran the exhaust fan. The smell faded, but it never really went away. Second night, I heard the footsteps. Above me, slow, deliberate, like someone walking from one end of the room to the other. I looked up at the ceiling. Nothing. Just drywall and old beams. I told myself it was the building settling, old pipes, normal sounds. Third night, I couldn't sleep. The smell was worse, stronger, and the footsteps, they weren't above me anymore. They were in the hallway, outside my bedroom door. I sat up in bed, stared at the door, listened. Nothing. Just silence. I got up, opened the door, looked down the hallway. Empty. Dark. Just the glow of the streetlight through the living room window. I went back to bed, didn't sleep. Fourth night, I found the note. It was under my door when I got home from work. Small piece of paper, folded once, handwritten. All it said was, "You're not alone, we're still here, but we can't get out." I read it 5 times, 6 times. My hands were shaking. I called the landlord. He laughed, said,
Oh, that's probably just the old tenants messing around. Kids, you know. Throw it away.
I said, "Who were the old tenants? The ones before me?" He paused, just for a second. Then he said,
Family. Nice people. Moved out a few months ago, like I told you.
I asked, why did they really move? Another pause, longer this time. Then,
Look, I told you, family emergency. Don't worry about it. Enjoy the apartment.
he hung up. I didn't enjoy the apartment. I sat on my couch, staring at that note, trying to figure out what to do. The handwriting looked old, not like a kid's. Careful, deliberate, like someone who had time to write it just right. I looked at the paper again, and that's when I noticed something I'd missed before. The handwriting. It matched the handwriting on my lease, the one the landlord signed. Same loop on the Y, same slant on the S, same everything. I pulled out my lease, held it next to the note. There was no doubt. The same person wrote both. The landlord wrote that note. The next morning, I went to the county records office, looked up the building, found the ownership history, found something interesting. The landlord didn't buy this building last year. He bought it 20 years ago, and for the last 15 years, there's been a pattern. Tenants move in, tenants move out fast, sometimes after a few months. sometimes after a week. Always the same reason listed: personal reasons, family emergency, relocation. I counted 12 tenants in 15 years. In a building that should hold a tenant for years. I went back to the apartment that night, packed a bag, called a friend and asked if I could crash on his couch for a few days. Told him I'd explain later. On my way out, I passed the basement door, the one in the back of the building, the one the landlord told me was storage only. Never go down there. The door was open, just a crack. I stopped, stared at it. The smell was stronger here. That same smell from my apartment, but worse, deeper, sweeter. And from behind that door, I heard something, a whisper, just one word. I couldn't make it out, but it was there. Someone was down there. I didn't wait. I walked out, got in my car, and drove to my friend's place. I haven't been back since. I called the police the next day, told them everything: the note, the handwriting, the tenants, the basement door. They said they'd look into it. That was 2 weeks ago. They haven't told me much, just that it's an ongoing investigation and that I shouldn't go back to the apartment. I'm not going back, but sometimes late at night, I think about that note, about the handwriting, about what the landlord wrote. We're still here, but we can't get out. Who's we? And how long have they been down there? I don't know. Maybe I never will. But I do know one thing. That apartment wasn't cheap because the landlord wanted it filled fast. It was cheap because someone wanted me to move in. Someone wanted a new tenant. Someone who wouldn't ask questions about the last one. Or the ones before that. Or the voices in the basement. I'm just glad I got out. Because some apartments you don't leave. You just become the next tenant. The one who's still here. The room behind the wall. I bought my first house 6 months ago. Small town in Illinois. Quiet streets, good schools, the kind of place where people leave their doors unlocked. It was a fixer-upper, but I didn't mind. I like working with my hands. Gives me something to do after work. The realtor said the house had been empty for about 2 years. Elderly couple lived there before. Both passed away, no kids to take over. Standard stuff. I moved in, started renovating room by room. Living room first, then the bedroom, then the basement. That's where things got weird. The basement was unfinished. Concrete floors, exposed beams, the usual. But there was this one wall that didn't match the others. Different color concrete. Fresher, like it had been patched up at some point. I didn't think much of it at first. Old houses have weird repairs. Then I started hearing things at night. Not loud, just sounds. Scratching, like something moving behind the walls. I figured it was mice. Old basement, happens all the time. I set some traps and forgot about it, but the sounds kept getting louder. And they weren't coming from the walls anymore. They were coming from behind that patch. One Saturday, I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed a sledgehammer and decided to open it up, just to see what was back there. Maybe old pipes, maybe a crawl space, something. The concrete crumbled after a few hits. Behind it was a door, a real door, wooden, old, with a handle. I stood there for a solid minute, just staring at it. A door behind a concrete wall, sealed on purpose. I opened it. Behind the door was a room, maybe 10 by 10. Carpet on the floor. Carpet in a basement room that was sealed off. Why do you put carpet in a sealed room? For soundproofing? So no one hears what happens inside. The room was empty, except for one thing. In the corner, against the wall, there was a small black door, like a cabinet door. But it was locked. 2 padlocks, heavy ones. Not the kind you use to keep things safe. The kind you use to keep things in. I looked closer at the locks. They were old, rusted, but they'd been installed from the outside. Whoever built this room wanted to make sure nothing got out. I spent the next day cutting through those locks. My hands were shaking the whole time. Part of me didn't want to open it. Part of me knew I should just seal the whole thing back up and never think about it again. But I had to know. When the last lock fell, I opened the door. Inside was a small crawlspace, and in that crawlspace, there was a metal box, like a small safe, and next to it, a stack of VHS tapes, 6 of them. Each tape was labeled with a date, 1994, 1995, and on each label, one word written over and over. No, 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 no. Just like that. No spaces, no other writing. Just that word, repeating, covering the whole label. I didn't watch them, I couldn't. I put them in a bag and called the police. They came. They looked at the room, the door, the locks, the tapes. They asked me questions I couldn't answer. They took the tapes, told me they'd investigate. That was 3 weeks ago. I haven't heard anything since. Every time I call, they say, ongoing investigation. They won't tell me what was on those tapes. They won't tell me if the previous owners are suspects. They won't tell me anything. But here's what I found out on my own. I talked to the neighbors, old couple across the street who've lived here for 40 years. I asked about the people who lived in my house before. They got quiet. Then the wife said,
"They kept to themselves, nice enough, but their son, he lived in the basement."
I asked what she meant. She said,
"He had his own room down there. They said he liked the dark. We never saw him, ever. Just heard stories."
I asked when the son left. She looked at her husband, then back at me.
"He never left. He just stopped being mentioned one day. Must be 20 years ago now."
I went home and stared at that wall, at the patch I'd broken through, at the room behind it. The son lived in the basement. Then he stopped being mentioned, and then someone sealed that room with concrete, with the door still there, with the lock still on. I don't know what was on those tapes. I don't know what happened to that son, but I know one thing. I can't sleep in this house anymore. Every night, I lie in bed and listen, and every night, I swear I can hear something. From behind that wall, from that sealed room, scratching, like someone trying to get out. What do you think? Were there a moment that made your skin crawl? Or was there something you could relate to? Let me know in the comments. If you want to stay safe out there, hit that follow button. I'll be here to warn you when danger comes.